the Trump we know now is a very different Trump than got elected in 2016.
In what way?
The Trump in
Yeah, in what way?
Well, I think in 2016 he was a shallow narcissist who thought it would just be cool running for president. Didn't think he'd gonna win, but he liked the idea, and I think he did have ideas. The Trump now, I think, I call weaponizing narcissism. The Trump we have now realizes if he's going to be great, we all know he wants to be great, then he has to be great. And I think that he would go into his next term knowing where the spoons and forks are and knowing who to trust. And I think he would attempt to be great, purely narcissistically.
Welcome to the Future's Edge podcast. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. We have, as you can see in the middle there, Dr. David Collum, who is professor. Is it professor emeritus? I like the word emeritus. Is that something?
No,
what does that mean?
Actually, that means I've retired.
Oh, no. So you're an active professor. Yeah.
No, I'm just professor over the hill.
Professor over the hill at Cornell University. And that is fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. I'm afraid now you have to call me Godfather, but
Indeed, right? We're used to that shit.
Yeah, I was listening to you and Mike Ferris. That was funnier than shit when he went to the Godfather drill.
That was funny stuff. Yeah, that Mike Ferris guy's a good guy. I liked his podcast.
He's a sweetheart. There's something about him that's so sincere. I don't know what it is.
I really liked him. I'm glad you
radiates sincerity. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Unlike Bobby and I, who radiate smart assery. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a plus too. There's merit to that.
And lean angry.
And angry.
Angry is good.
At
one point I said I was mad about something, and someone on Twitter said, "You're always mad," and I go, "Yep."
Last time Dave and I were at dinner, Bobby, and we can go deep, as you probably know. But I felt like I switched into the role of trying to talk him off the ledge. Like, there are great things in this world, too. There are nice people I meet every day.
I know. I just haven't met. I just don't know any right now.
But there are French Bulldogs, and you have 5 of them right around you, don't you?
Boston Terriers.
Boston Terriers. I'm sorry. I want to get into some meaty stuff. I want to talk about finance. I want to talk about part of your year-end review. Right. How many people read your year-end review? It's enormous, isn't it?
Not a clue. 10, 15, 20 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an amazing read.
I don't have a sense of the stats. I do know I run into people. Like one day I was in a convenience store or something. The guy said, "Hey, you write that year-end review?" I go, "You got to be kidding." I was up in the Adirondacks. So I don't really know. I don't have any sense of it.
When you released the last one, 2 days after you released it, I walked into my restaurant and 2 different patrons said, "Hey, Dave Collum mentioned you in his year-end review." And I was like, "Oh, so that's pretty cool that this is on Valentine."
With greatness there, Jimmy. Brush with greatness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there are times I wonder how I got beamed into this role. Last night I was exchanging a very brief exchange with Eric Weinstein. Couple DMs and he says, "You want to have a chat?" And I go, "Yeah." It's 2:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden the phone rings. I go, "What?
Now?"
And so we actually talked till 4 in the morning. My wife said I was psychotic.
No, I've done a deep dive study on Dave Collum and why he is where he is. Because it's not just the fact that you have a brilliant mind, which is evidenced by your academic career and your academic achievements, but it is a bullshit meter that starts from where am I being buffaloed here? And it's a willingness to speak out and not care who takes a shot at you. And I think it's a great mix, personally.
I think that's actually correct. I'm not academically smart. People say, "Oh, that can't possibly be." No, I could go through my record. I worked my ass off to get okay grades, right? There was no genius here. But I think there's probably a street sense. I think the bullshit meter works, and
I love that.
And the complete lack of filter is undeniable.
Undeniable.
Undeniable. I've never stopped.
And I don't intend to stop. And Bobby, by the way, is the same way. And I don't mean to be hogging this all just between you and I, but we're not afraid to be fired from jobs that we had if we're speaking reasonable truths. Go fuck themselves. You know.
Well, they'd have trouble firing me too. So there's that.
I'm one of the few who actually know every bit of the details about that whole story. Which,
right.
Yes, Bobby, you got anything?
So I have a funny story to tell you. I tweeted one day, a couple of weeks ago, about Cornell actually being okay. And I said, we're in the news for all this stuff that's been happening. And I said, Cornell's okay. I said, the President Pollock is okay. I said, the provost was a rock star. And then I said, Cornell's a utopian place. And I said, what we have to do is get out of the news cycle, right? That was really the problem. And I get a call from my brother-in-law, who happens to be a trustee, and he reads me part of the tweet. And I go, Ezra, how the hell did you get a hold of that? He says, I got it from my boss. I said, Daphne saw it? He said, no, my other boss, the chairman of the board of trustees. So the tweet made it all the way to the chairman of the board of trustees. And he was thrilled that someone wasn't shitting down our throats.
I want to ask you something, Dave, because I read your year-end review as well. Saw Jimmy in there, started laughing. This thing that's happening with the fraud case, okay, right, with Trump. Now, I always feel, and everybody always feels the need to do this, right? I didn't vote for Trump before. I don't know if I'll vote for him now, although I probably will, given what's been going on, just out of sympathy for the crap that he's been put through that no one else has ever been put through. Where in the hell do they get off? Two things. Where in the hell do they get off accusing a real estate mogul of fraud when this exact same situation, the way it was described in the documents, happens every single day with real estate guys? Since when do they care about bankers? And then Hochul comes on and goes, by the way, if you're another real estate developer, don't worry, we're not going to do it to you.
I know. We're only going to fuck Trump, right?
We're not going to do it to you. I just want to hear your take on that.
Well, it's pretty clear that the Democratic Party has weaponized the justice system. To me, it's treason of a higher order. So I actually would, hang them from the nearest limb. I think they're truly, and part of the problem is that undermines the real fabric of society. I say things, I think, well, I got to be on the right side of the law, and then I go, but that doesn't even matter anymore. It just doesn't matter that you're following the laws. The Trump story is just ludicrous because, of course, all the people involved got put in their positions because they opposed Trump. And so I think the judge should be disbarred. I think the prosecutor should be disbarred. I think they should be brought up on treason charges. I don't know. Forget about what the real definition of treason is. It's my goddamn definition of treason. I think Fannie Willis ought to be bent over and dealt with, and she looks like she's going to be, not just her boyfriend. I think it's one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. When Biden went on the air and was bragging about putting 870 man-years worth of prison time under the January 6 guys. And then they come out and they say, we're going to start going after the guys who didn't even enter the Capitol building. You Nazi fuckheads, right? I mean, there's just nothing I can say. What I would want to say would get the FBI knocking on my door.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I am a little surprised that you still walk among the living. I'm surprised that I still walk among the living. It just must mean that we haven't got to the level of pissing the wrong people off yet, or the right people off. We'll see how that plays out.
I think the second biggest disgrace of this, if I could throw them in, the second biggest disgrace of this, obviously the case itself is a disgrace. You can say what you want about all the other cases, right? But this particular one is just so outlandish, right before our eyes. And I think the second biggest disgrace of this whole situation is people hate Trump so much that they can't see the silliness of this. Like the just absolute tomfoolery and banana republicness, if that's a word.
It is.
Of this, because you can go to people and say, well, he did say his. If I could get them to believe that my house was worth $10 billion after fricking doing an appraisal themselves, and I get to get a loan based on that, I'm doing it tomorrow. Now I'm probably
and he paid it back without missing a payment.
Bingo.
Right. So smart, supposedly smart people put on their moron caps on this one. And I just don't understand it, because I hate Biden at this point. I just hate Biden at this point. But I don't like the fact, for example, that the Republicans impeached Mayorkas because it is more bullcrap.
Yeah.
And I think that the Republicans started with impeaching Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if you want to impeach Clinton, let's round up all the people he killed and take them to trial for murder, for Christ's sake.
I mean, it is statistically impossible to have that many friends and business partners die in unusual circumstances. We've all lived on this planet a very long time. We run statistical analysis as a matter of course, and it cannot possibly be. It's just crazy. However, I wanted to add something real quick.
And that leaves the rape charges off, right? That ignores the rape charges.
Of course. Yeah, how about that? Juanita Broderick was very convincing on 60 Minutes before our media decided.
You know what my claim to fame with Juanita is? This is great, actually. She posted the tweet that said, Bill, you know you raped me. Hillary, you know you tried to destroy me. And I said to Juanita, Juanita, you could pin that tweet. And she says, I don't know how to pin a tweet. And so I taught her how to pin tweets. And then she pinned it. And I got screen grabs of the whole conversation. So I taught Juanita how to pin a tweet that got unbelievable click counts. That's how you influence an election.
Okay. Now, I wanted to say something before we move on this, is I have no more blame left for Joe Biden, Fani Willis, Letitia James, Brandon Johnson, Chicago. I don't blame them more. They told the people, the voters, exactly who they were, and the people voted for them. That is on the backs of people. Joe Biden ran on open borders. Brandon Johnson, Chicago, ran on crime-friendly policies, and the knuckleheads voted for them. Brandon Johnson is exactly who he said he was going to be.
They voted for him?
No, I'm not sure they voted for him.
That's the problem, right? That is the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I personally, first of all, I think they rigged the election, period, QED. And I think the data is awfully supportive. And there was a recent paper that came out that really talked about the magnitude of it. But I get to the bottom line and say, look, here's the deal. They did everything within their power to keep him out of the White House. And you're going to try to make a case to me that they forgot to rig the election? It's an impossibility. It's an
Bobby and I are from Chicago. It's an impossibility.
Right. More dead guys vote in Chicago than living people. Right.
Yeah.
Someone said, if I die, please don't vote. Please don't let me vote for Joe Biden. And so there's that. But I don't. If Joe Biden wins in 2024, it's just not imaginable to me. He's insane.
Then we just live in a banana republic.
We do now.
Something else that I know is something of yours, and I know that nobody turns into a podcast wanting to hear any tales about pedophilia. Although could be a big deal. But anyway, so let's rewind the clock to 2016. And I want to tell you what I'm thinking and where I'm crazy. So 2016, the QAnon, Pizzagate, whatever it was outlandish. I thought it was outlandish at the time. I thought it was crazy. Mm-hmm. I wanted to distance myself from these right-wing nutjobs who were pushing out this conspiracy, which was crazy. However, now it is 8 years later, and literally we've had 2 people arrested, 1 convicted for running the same elite pedophile ring that we were talking about in 2016, or that they were talking about. So now you look at the preponderance of the evidence, including the fact that they haven't released any name of anyone who was trafficked or trafficked to or from. There has to be people trafficked to or from. Then all of a sudden, like people now, I hear people like, oh, are you one of those crazy Pizzagate people? And I'm like, well, Pizzagate's not as crazy now. Actually, on balance, it seems more true than not. What am I missing?
You're not. Julian Assange's WikiLeaks emails show you Pizzagate's real.
Yeah,
that evidence is strong enough for me to, if you put a gun to my head and say, place your bets. Just those emails alone. And then you get guys like Elefantis, who was posting under the name Jimmy Comet and posting all sorts of crazy crap online. And so Pizzagate, as you know, I've studied this problem. I've been studying it for hours and hours for a long time. I've tried to write something about it. I've got about 150 pages of debris. I think Epstein might be a tip of the iceberg. And I think it might be a much bigger story. And Pizzagate's certainly part of it, but I think there's trafficking networks all over the world. I've talked to CIA guys. I've talked to DOD case officers. I was on I actually, there's a podcast out there I haven't tweeted that I spent 2 hours going through the whole narrative of global trafficking and pedophilia and its influence on politics. And it's somewhat disjointed and stuff, but I'm not sure I'm ready to throw it public. So it's just kind of lurking out there with 20 views. What I'm trying to get my brain around is whether pedophilia networks are controlling global politics, and the data looks pretty good to me. And there's some amazing people signing off on it, like an archbishop in the Vatican named Vigano, who said that that all the leaders of the world are stuck in this network. There's a ton of CIA guys and stuff who are saying it. Who was it? Flynn has now jumped on Pizzagate. Is General Flynn, is that a credible source? Depends on which side of the aisle you're on, probably. The former Secretary General of the United Nations made reference to how pedophilia is the currency of geopolitics. There's dozens of guys who are more credible than me who talk about how Viktor Orban just the other day said we've got to clear the pedophilia out of our country. He's not talking about pervs and trailer parks. We know that you got to get pervs and trailer parks out of the game, but that's not something the president of a country talks about. He's talking about the fact that they're controlling the politics of Hungary. What's holding me back is first of all, it's a very complex story. Second of all, I don't want to get whacked. And I'm not really afraid of getting whacked. My brother's worried I'm going to blow my credibility, and I go, that ship sailed. I can make the case. I mean, I collect the data. It's very hard, though, because the data is very sketchy, because the victims are split personality, junkie, broken individuals who are coming out and saying this is what they did to me, and people don't believe them. But the data from official sources even say 1 to 10 million kids a year are getting trafficked. So cut that in half if you want. I don't care. It's still 500,000 kids. The question is, where are they going? And the better question. So I gave this 2-hour talk, and someone in the Zoom group, while I was talking, dropped a dime and called a friend who's a CIA trafficking expert. The guy showed up for the last half hour, and he gave this quick synopsis of his view, and it was spot on everything I'd said for 2 straight hours. And then they kept asking me questions, and I'd answer them, and then they'd turn to the CIA guy and goes, yeah, that's pretty much, I agree, not a problem. And so it held up well. I had dinner with Matt Taibbi the other day, and I told him this, and he was not ready for it.
It takes time.
Really, at first he thought, yeah, but so we had a CIA DOD case officer in the Zoom group, and I asked him about trafficking at the very end, and he said, he starts talking about Epstein. I go, we all know about Epstein, and it's huge, right? If he has 1,000 controlled, politically important people, that's running the world right there. That's it.
Yeah.
But it's much bigger than that, I think. And so he starts talking about Epstein. I go, no. We all know about Epstein. We all know how bad it is. We don't know who they are. We're never going to find out who they are, at least confidently. I'm interested in the deeper, darker stuff. And I said, let me ask you a simple question. And this guy, I've checked. This guy's absolutely real. And I said, is the Clinton Foundation trafficking children? He said, oh, absolutely. Now, I don't need to ask him any other question. That question in itself shows the untrained viewer going, holy shit. That means that I have completely and utterly misjudged the magnitude of this problem. And the evidence supporting the Clinton Foundation as a child trafficking organization is actually compelling.
Wow.
But I can't do it in a podcast.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. When you talk, and I guess I probably just got my answer to this question. When you talk about the data is compelling, I mean, I know how to look at the data of why Apple might go up or something, but I don't. What do you mean by the data, as much as you're comfortable saying?
Well, so for example, there's a woman named Laura Silsby who got arrested twice trafficking in Haiti. This was above the fold news story. Made a call into the Clintons. They got her out of Haiti, and nothing happened to her. One of the questions I like to ask people who are in disbelief is, okay, if you accept that 1 million kids are disappearing, name for me one person who's gotten in trouble for accepting one of these kids. One person. And there's one answer that I think would be the probable answer, would be Dennis Hastert, right?
Oh,
That'd be the one that we know. But you go, okay, now name a second one, and you'd be out of luck. And it turns out that there's whole documentaries of people who've been caught for which nothing has happened. They're well-known cases for which someone steps in. So if you dig into it, you just keep finding the Clintons' fingerprints all over these problems. But they are just part of the story. The art import-export world is up to their asses. The CIA guy said he estimated 18 to 20% of the CIA is involved in child trafficking. And I'm going, holy shit, I didn't expect that, you know.
Just to put a fine point on this too, is that this is, and for people who are watching and think that we're crazy, this is verifiably true going back hundreds of years, even probably more. Like a buddy of mine was an FBI investigator for 40 years. Just was talking to him about a month ago. And when he began 40 years ago, there was plenty of the J. Edgar Hoover guys who were still on the staff who he was friendly with.
Roy Cohn.
Right. But anyway, so it was in the organization, it was standard procedure that if you were investigating anyone who had any sort of name, and within that investigation, you found something that was compromising in any way, sexually, I'm not even, whether it be pedophilia or sexually in any way, immediately was taken out of the investigation and brought to a special file with Hoover because he used it, you know, if he needed it at a point in time. And the point I'm trying to make is that was just casually mentioned. Like, of course, that's the case. If we're investigating someone who could be a political problem, you pocket any of the things that they do that you could bring out at any time, or at least threaten with them, because it's not valuable if you bring it out. And that's what's happening with Epstein, correct?
It is. But there is this question: where do 1 million kids go?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a demand for 1 million kids in a sort of a purely pedophilic world. I just don't know how you'd spread 1 million kids. I think probably organ harvesting, including blood harvesting, is probably maybe a big consumer of these kids. The guys who seem to, so one of the risks, besides the fact that your source material is always a little bit, you're not going to hear it on CNN. Of course, that's not credible at all, so that's not going to help. But the sources are always sketchy, and so you're looking to sort of cross-check, but the problem is you don't know if the origin of what everyone is saying is the same source. So it could be some tweet from 20 years ago, and that's it. So you kind of have to use your bullshit meter set on maximum setting, and just say, I'm not yet sure whether this is valid. Oprah gets picked on. I don't think it's valid. Tom Hanks gets picked on. It's getting a little sketchy in there. Hollywood, I think, is loaded with pervs, just loaded with pervs. I almost, there are claims by Hollywood insiders who say you can't get good gigs unless you are compromised. And so there are Hollywood producers who have come out and called out the pedophiles and then got whacked.
Wow.
And so the fatality rate of people blowing the whistle. Now, my concern is I might have misread the room. There's a woman named like Liz Crocken who's way more outspoken than me. She's a former sort of ABC or NBC talking head. So she's got credibility. She's kind of LizCrocken.com now, a little bit too much. But I could be misreading it. She could be part of some master plan, master organization, which she plays her role, and they can say, okay, Liz, we have control over Liz. This guy Cornell, we don't. We got to deal with him. And as J6 showed, no matter how innocent you are, if they decide that you need to be used to display the force of the state, you will be used to display the force of the state. So the question I like to ask is, let's say, here's a couple questions. Let's say your daughter is 14 years old and she comes home with a double mastectomy because some doc did it without telling you. What's your next move? That's a rhetorical question. But I think that doctor would be first in line for a sex change, right?
Yeah, for me, right?
Right. Imagine you have a son or something who's in jail for 15 years because it's January 6th. What are you thinking about? Now, I'm not saying that the non-legal solutions are adequate, but I'm saying that the legal solutions are inadequate.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there going, boy, I better not get liver cancer, because I will identify the person who is most guilty for putting my son in prison for 15 years for no fucking reason.
Right.
And I'll find a way to get revenge.
Oh,
and this is in the olden days, if you're a dick. We were watching a show about 1720 town on the Hudson Bay, and it was lawless, right? And some guy's a super dick, and I'm going, there's something not right about that, because if you're a super dick in a lawless place, your life expectancy is going to be about 20 minutes. And so I think you survived in the old days by not being a super dick. And then the question is, so if you're a doctor doing gender transitions on 14-year-olds without telling the parents,
we have a problem.
There should be a little voice in your head that says, this could cause me more trouble than it's worth. And if I'm on a jury, no father's getting convicted of anything he does.
I'm really surprised that hasn't happened yet.
I'm stunned.
I really am.
I'm stunned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stunned. And it would be a good thing for society. I would like the gender bending doctors who are doing it very recklessly, in my opinion. Now, I'm sympathetic to someone who thinks they're in the wrong body, right?
Amen.
Being a teenager is hard enough.
Yeah.
But a doctor who talks to you for some period of time, brief period, and then is willing to lop your tits off or cut your dick off or whatever, that doctor should be aware of risk.
Yeah, and by the way, even if that doctor fully 100% believes what he's doing is the right thing,
tough luck. Tough luck.
So do I. You're just
you
an
and
idiot.
I believe the same thing, right? So here's what's going to take that out. Actually, it's a simple solution. There's a statute of limitations on lawsuits on these treatments, and they're stupidly short. So what they have to do is keep the person who's transitioning happy about what the hell's happening for a year or two. They're talking about extending it 20 years, and all of a sudden the clinics are going, oh, we cannot take the risk of people having to be happy with what we did to them for 20 years. And the insurance companies are starting to say, we're not going to insure you for this shit. There's a lot of, so I think that part of the narrative that is appalling, which I'll throw in there, guys doing women's sports, I think is going to wrap itself up. I think it's going to become an unmanageable mess.
I hope so.
And I did a poll on Twitter about dudes doing women's sports, right? So it's everywhere now, right? Well, I did a poll and I said, look, no waffling, no ifs, ands, or buts. Do you support dudes doing women's sports? And I got 97.6% no. So it means society has decided, but somehow it's still happening.
Yep.
And I don't know, if you're a female former athlete, so you're out of the system, you got nothing to lose, and you're not speaking up, it's your fault. It is. One time I cornered a three medal Olympic athlete, a woman. I didn't intend to do this. I said, what are your thoughts on men competing in women's sports? And I watched her tighten up. And then I watched her give me a canned delivery. And I realized it wasn't fair to ask her the question. Because if she gave me an honest answer and somehow it got out, she'd be kicked off the team. And I realized I put her right over a barrel by asking her that. And so, but there's plenty of people who have nothing to lose in that world I've coached 2 collegiate sports. I know sports. And they both had women's components. And these gender bending idiots who've never played a sport, so they don't know what they're asking the women to sacrifice. And
Amen.
So I think women's sports teams should be boycotting. I think, and I think they'll, and I've got a daughter playing a sport and some dude hurts her. The lawsuits are flying. The lawsuits are flying.
And then we're circling back to perhaps old-fashioned frontier justice too.
It gets complicated there because it's not quite the same thing, but yes, but I'm releasing the hounds on that person if my daughter gets hurt by a dude. On the other hand, she has the right to not play. She has the right to say, screw you, I'm not playing. And I think her teammates ought to do it. I think the coaches ought to do it. Women's sports is dominated by women, and they're not speaking up except for Riley Gaines. By the way, you and I both know a guy, I'll tell you offline, who's paying for Riley Gaines' security detail.
Really?
We both know him.
Wow.
He told me, and he's paying for her security detail. She has to walk around with guards.
Huh.
That's fucked up.
Wow. I don't even know what to say to this shit. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know. When I got canceled, I slept with shotguns.
I remember you telling me that.
I put knives around the house. I said, look, if I'm going to the light, I ain't going alone. Somehow I'm gonna be going hand in hand with somebody. I wasn't worried about Cornell students. I was worried about Antifa showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first.
And I could imagine someone giving me guff saying this shit on this podcast. I go, okay, let's have it out. Let's do it in public. Let's find out if you think cutting some guy's daughter's tits off are a good idea. Let's lay it out on the goddamn table.
Yeah, lean in.
Yeah, say it out loud. Lean in. Go ahead. Tell me. Say you endorse cutting off teenage girls' tits. Endorse it. Castrating them chemically. Endorse it. Sign off on that. One time there was a safety issue and they were trying to do something I thought was not safe. I said, send me a letter saying you're taking responsibility for the issue and we'll do it. And they said, oh, never mind.
Gotta go.
Gotta go. Sorry, never mind.
Dave, you're not the
people
first
ought to get
person
mad.
I've heard say that it seems like things are swinging back.
On these minor issues.
Well, that's what I was
going to say. There's no big
swing.
swing.
That's what I was going to say.
There's no big swing.
Where is the sort of line where the swinging stops? Can you kind of identify it?
Well, weaponization of the DOJ for starters.
Okay.
And I'm torn. So let's say Trump gets elected. Let's say they can't rig it enough. Let's say 90-10 vote. No matter what they do.
Might be part of the reason they can't. We can talk about that in a minute.
Oh, fascinating. I'd like Trump to sign him on his ticket. But if Trump gets in there, the two lobes of my brain are battling whether I want to see him go full Leroy Jenkins and get revenge.
Exactly the same for me. I don't know what I want him to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah.
No, but I don't know whether I want him to get even or just try to move through it and improve the country. And by the way, I think the Trump we know now is a very different Trump than got elected in 2016.
In what way?
In what way?
Well, I think in 2016, he was a shallow narcissist who thought it would just be cool running for president. Didn't think he'd gonna win, but he liked the idea. And I think he did have ideas. The Trump now, I think, I call weaponizing narcissism. The Trump we have now realizes if he's going to be great, we all know he wants to be great, then he has to be great. And I think that he would go into his next term knowing where the spoons and forks are and knowing who to trust. And I think he would attempt to be great, purely narcissistically.
All right. So can I take you in a different direction then?
You betcha.
I think I know what I would like Trump to be. I think I would like him to
be president.
Not go full. I would like him to not go full Leroy Jenkins. I would like him to go partial Leroy Jenkins.
That's right. That's right.
I think if he actually, because if he goes full Leroy Jenkins, I think he has every right to do that. To be honest, I mean.
But then they'll say, "I told you so."
Right.
Then they'll say, "I told you so."
And then they'll say, "I told you so." Threat to democracy, tyrant, ignoring a lot of the tyrannical qualities of what's already going on. And I don't even blame Joe Biden. I mean, I watched my father, suffer with Parkinson's dementia, and I see the exact same thing in this man.
I do blame Joe Biden.
Well, I feel really sorry for him because I don't think he even knows where he is anymore. I truly don't.
But he's been a bad person for his whole
long time.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So, and I blame Jill Biden in a very big way. She should have been hauling his ass off the screen. I mean, she should have said, "Come on, Joe, time to go."
Totally agree on that part. But I think if Trump gets in and he goes after Fauci and those guys, goes after the bad actors in the DOJ, not just on his own case, but mainly on the J6 stuff.
In good cases, yeah.
Yeah, the good case. Yeah, the J6.
Well, I want him to get day one and release them all.
Move on.
I just want him to go and release them all day one. His first day should be a blanket pardon of everyone. You could say, well, there's some guys who do deserve to be in jail. I don't want him fucking around trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
I want him to just do a clean sweep. 870 hours of prison time gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I get really tired of trying to convince some of my friends on the left, and I have some, and most of them have decided on RFK, to be honest. Like 95%.
Right.
Those are people on the left, Bobby?
Yes, on the left.
Well, that's good to hear. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not surrounded by as many in Florida as I used to be when I was in Chicago, but there's still a big handful of them, and they've all decided, I got to do RFK because I can't do Trump and I can't do any more Biden. But then if Trump goes in there and goes full Leroy Jenkins, they're going to ignore everything that was done by this Justice Department, this administration, and just go, see, we told you. And
he will
that's
become
just
the headline.
Infuriate me as an individual. But I guess I don't get to make that decision.
So you still have friends on the left, huh?
I do. Listen, I try to take it to the point where I go, look, I had a friend of mine say recently to me, well, I like DeSantis, except that banning book stuff. I said, okay, pause for a second. He lives here in Florida with me. Well, not with me. He's not in my house. But I said, okay, what book can you not buy? Tell me a book. Let's go on Amazon right now. Pick a book. Make one up. I bet you I can find one with the made-up title. And I'll order it on Amazon right now. I'll bring it over to your house.
I'll tell you when you couldn't buy.
What's
Biden's greatest hits.
But Bobby, to take that one step further, you can even take that book into the school. It's not even illegal. It's not even banned in the school. It's just not part of the curriculum.
So here's a book worth reading.
Well, anyway, I don't think you're right about that. But let's just move on. And I'm like, okay,
Ricky Schlotz, Canceling the American Mind is a good read because she talks about what is largely a left-wing problem, right? But she does show us in her book where the right wing is contributing. And so she works very hard to try to bring. Now, I still think it's a 90-10 ratio. And she tries to make it not a 90-10 ratio, but I don't think this is a left-wing thing, in my opinion. So no, I don't want him to go full Leroy Jenkins for that reason. But I still there's a dark streak in me that wants to see him go Leroy Jenkins, right. So I want to see him do like in the professional wrestling where he beats the guy. So who do you want to see on his ticket? You get to pick his running mate. Who do you want?
If I get to pick it?
You get to pick it.
RFK. I would love that. I would just think
give me a second choice now. Or Jimmy, you give me your first choice then.
Vivek.
He's too smart.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't think Vivek could do it.
He's too he's so intellectually above the crowd. He wouldn't connect with them, I think. And that's why I don't think he was able to get legs.
I don't know anything about Kristi Noem. Is she any good, Bobby? You know her or no?
I like her as that choice. I like him doing something different.
Wait, was she the hand? No, that was Boebert.
No, that was Boebert.
I can't believe you just said
were you going to say Handsy?
No.
Now, if I want to go on a date,
I want to go on with her. Yeah, I was going to say she's good at dating. Is that something she's supposed to be embarrassed about? Yeah,
I'll throw some others out there. I would love to see. I would like to see something. I wouldn't mind seeing someone like Douglas McGregor.
I don't know him.
I would love to see him Secretary of Defense.
Dan Crenshaw. I would like to see Dan Crenshaw.
I'm less clear on Crenshaw. I think he's a neocon.
You might be right.
Yeah, I don't want any more wars.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he's a neocon.
You might be right.
And Tulsi Gabbard.
That
wouldn't be a dynamite ticket because she'd bring left-wing supporters, chicks.
My actual dream ticket was Vivek and Tulsi.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for a long time.
I
saw that. I'd be literally.
I've been talking about Tulsi for probably a dozen years. I spotted her.
You have.
I spotted her years ago and said, you got to keep an eye on her. And they're going, who the hell are you talking about? And I go, she's from Hawaii. And, she's a MILF. She's got everything, right?
Yeah. And that was my, I would literally be pounding the streets. I'd quit my job and walk around and go, how dumb are you to not want this?
Yeah. Right.
By the way, interchange the two of them. I don't care which one.
Quit his job. What's this? Professional welfare line stander.
Why not? It's here. So, okay, I have a question for both of you. So you said that you spoke to Eric Weinstein recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a huge fan. Eric is way over my head, but I'm a huge fan of his brother.
Eric's over everyone's head.
Yeah, he really
is. Eric is brilliant of a different kind.
So I'm a huge fan of his brother Brett, and I read Hunter Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century that him and his wife Heather Haying wrote.
It's a great book.
Great book. I'm just going to be honest.
Chesterton's Fence. Chesterton Spence.
Yeah. And
right.
he went over the whole Occam's razor was all over the book, and Hamlin's razor was all over the book, all this
right.
stuff. And I'll be honest, my intellectual level's about here. So I had to read most pages 2 and 3 times before I moved on. So this 300 and some odd page book took me about 6 months to get through and comprehend.
Audiobooks.
Yeah.
Audiobooks.
Well,
Audiobooks.
I don't know that. I listen to their podcasts all the time. But anyway, I'm getting off the track. This is a question for both of you. He had an idea a while ago, and I don't know if it was his or Heather's, and it just fascinates me, the dark horse ticket. Do you remember that? So the dark horse ticket was somebody from the right and somebody from the left.
Oh, bipartisan ticket.
Yeah, and after 2 years, they switch.
So I do
one is
remember
vice president,
that.
one is president. After 2 years, they switch.
Right.
And I was just fascinated by this because he said this forces the two sides to work together and become the actual uniparty that they basically already are.
Is Jimmy going to choke the chicken? What's he doing there?
No, I was just closing my window. I was cold. I have my windows open because it's
so. This is the beauty of Tulsi Gabbard, in that it would be a ticket where the VP candidate had run for president from the other party 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. How do you not like that?
And by the way, I'm bringing this up because I love the idea. I love the book. And I want someone listening to this to reach out to Brett because he's not answered me yet to come on this show. But go ahead.
Yeah, I am connected with Brett, but I think he's pretty busy, and I don't think his Tucker. I don't think his Tucker Carlson interview cleared his docket at all because it was a brilliant interview. And Tucker's done some brilliant ones. He's done some bizarre ones, like when he did Kevin Spacey. What was that?
Hold on. Tucker Carlson interviewed Kevin Spacey?
It's worse than that. Kevin Spacey stayed in character during the interview.
Which character?
The sleazy politician guy.
Oh,
what's the name of that TV show?
House of Cards.
House of Cards. He stayed in House of Cards, and I'm going, what is Tucker doing?
This is creepy and wrong.
I wanted to not watch it, but I stayed with it just out of principle.
So I always have a quick, like a minor. I wanted to get to finance, but it looks like we're not going to, which I'm fine with, by the way. I was at a party, and I have friends who are high level education wise, high level, success wise in their careers, and I mentioned that the CIA had essentially infiltrated, the top 10 tech companies. And they looked at me like I had two heads. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? I said, let's imagine that all of us ran the CIA right here. And our job was literally to gather intel. And then all of a sudden, 6-8 companies figure out the best way to do that better than anyone ever has. Literally, they're intel gathering companies. We're not going to tap into that. And at the time,
the data is so supportive but the other thing, they were angel investors in these companies. They didn't just jump in. They founded the goddamn companies.
Yes. Did you know that, Bobby? That's the Mike Pence thing that just came out. Yeah. Literally, Google, that was the CIA's money, the Defense Department's money as well. That started Google, correct?
I only know it to be true with Google. I don't know if it's anybody else.
No, Facebook.
They
were very early in Facebook. And you know that if the CIA comes to you and says, oh, by the way, we're going to partner up with you, what are you going to say?
Yes.
What are you going to say? No. By the way, if you look at things like tech revenues and tech earnings and stuff, you have no idea. I look at a company like Facebook and I go, it's a piece of crap.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is not Standard Oil and U.S. Steel and General Motors. This is crap. So then the question is where these revenues come from. And of course, Zuckerberg says, oh, ad revenues. I go, the ad revenue business can't be that big. No. There's just not enough money to make those come. So the question is, what percentage of are coming from black ops budgets? How much of their earnings are coming from black ops budgets? Because, you ask Catherine Austin Fitts, she'll tell you there's 20 trillion missing from the Pentagon. How much did that go to Google, to Facebook, to Twitter, to you name it? To SpaceX, to Tesla.
Yeah. If we were working for the CIA, we'd do the exact same thing. And then they get to a critical mass where if they need funding, nobody's going to say no to them for the same reason that nobody said no to them at Google.
They funded Walt Disney to make Disney World.
Really?
Yes.
Why do we think Trump is still alive?
Fascinating question. I think he'd be a tough whack. I think I'm not convinced the CIA works for us. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
So the CIA is domiciled in the United States. It's no more U.S. based than J.P. Morgan. So I say, okay, J.P. Morgan's a U.S. bank. Yeah, well, they have branches in every country in the world. And when the Fed is bailing out banks, the Fed's bailing out banks no matter where the hell they are. And so, Federal Reserve's not federal. Powell's not worried about the United States. He's worried about the banks, and those are multinational. And so I think the CIA, in a nutshell, is a global crime syndicate that is domiciled in the United States, has a sort of above in view budget from the U.S. and has their black ops budget, which is potentially much bigger. So if you read about the drug trade, for example, I always knew the CIA, not always, but for a long time, the CIA dabbled in the drug trade. There's a book called Operation Gladio that makes a very compelling case that the entire drug trade is a triumvirate between the CIA, which does geopolitical shit, organized crime, which gets the drugs to the street, and the Vatican, which banks. And now you take that triumvirate of power players. Are you going to be able to try to take over their territory? You could be a Mexican drug lord. You're not going to touch those guys. You try to do that. Guess what? You're about to see the U.S. Marines show up on your shores, right? And so then that's why I think also the CIA said, well, we could use some more revenue. Let's traffic children. It's $154 billion annual business. It's more money.
I think I made the right decision not having any.
Well, we agree with that. We agree with that, Bobby. We think that you're the shallow end of the gene pool, and that we should not
children.
We should not promote them.
And the fact that be one of those dads.
The fact that you couldn't get the fact that you couldn't get it up is a sort of a poorly kept secret.
That's where you have the backseat.
No, I'm fine with that kind of a take on it. I'm good with it. I'm good.
No, but Bobby, particularly being Italian, and I do think one of the reasons that
he's admitting he's Italian. That's the problem.
One of the reasons I think that they got into organized crime a little bit too. I do think Italians tend to be a little angrier, a little shorter to temper. Some cultures
also
just seem shorter. To be. But yeah, but I'm saying to you, Bobby, and Dave knows that when you have
with
kids,
a flat head, with a flat head.
Yeah. Anyone messes with your kids, like you've never felt that kind of anger before, and you've felt a lot of anger before.
I have.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
But also, I think Italians were very, patriotic. The Italian Americans were patriotic as hell. So as the story goes, you can say that in front of everything I ever say, that they used the Italian mob to soften up Sicily for the invasion during World War II. And then when they went to, they got him out of jail. They sprung him from jail to do it.
Hold on a sec. They didn't get him out of jail at first. He gave them, because he was a patriot, and they said they'd get him out of jail. They said they wouldn't. And then he sunk the Navy's biggest boat in New York Harbor from jail. And then they let him out of jail. That's a fact.
Right. I know that part, actually. Right. And so what happened is when they went to create the CIA, the foundational staff was organized crime. They didn't say, oh, let's go hire some really well-trained lawyers from Harvard Law School. No, they hired the guys who they were working with. So the CIA's very beginning starts with organized crime.
I always love bringing up to people that the largest mass lynching in U.S. history was 1891 in New Orleans, and it was 11 Italian Americans. Mm-hmm. That's the single largest mass lynching that ever took place.
Do you know what we celebrate now because of that lynching?
You're asking me?
Yep.
No.
What do you celebrate?
Columbus Day. After that mass lynching of Italian Americans, the uproar was enormous.
They threw you a bone. They threw you a bone.
They threw the Italians a bone by instituting Columbus Day as a national holiday.
That probably pissed off the Irish.
Sure it does. They're so stupid. They want to go get mass lynched just to have it just have them to get something.
Speaking of the Irish, I used to have a T-shirt that I wore. Obviously, St. Patrick's Day is a huge day in Chicago, and I have a T-shirt that says St. Patrick was Italian. You're welcome.
Was he really Italian?
His parents were Roman aristocracy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
that doesn't mean he's Italian.
That doesn't mean he's Italian, but if you tell
going to say it anyway,
he just gets mad.
Right. Right. We're
Well,
going to give you
that was
credit
my
for
only
some
goal
shit.
anyway, was to get a drunk
Hey,
Irish guy.
you guys are tops in my book for lasagna. I mean,
Oh yeah, just you can stop there, and our contribution is good.
That's
Thanks
exactly
for
right.
giving us
I
that.
was making a big lasagna. This is how stupid I am. I was making a big lasagna, and I said, well, we can freeze. I said to my son, does it freeze well? And he said, Dad, half the store is frozen lasagna. And I go, yeah, you make a good point there.
By the way, who makes a small lasagna? Stop using the word
that's
big in
just
front of
stupid.
that.
No,
That's just stupid,
big
right?
ass lasagna.
Make huge. I need to buy a bigger oven when I make lasagna.
Bobby, why is everything so expensive? Just to put a point on this, I haven't brought my lunch to work in 20 years, and my 3 eggs and bacon used to cost $7. Now they cost $14. My wireless bill was so expensive. Why the heck is wireless so expensive?
I don't know. I mean, it feels like a car payment from 10 years ago. What you pay for wireless now? I mean, what are you paying all that money for? Is it speed, coverage, data? Is it this 5G that we all needed access to? Unlimited talk and text, which I feel like we've had forever. Mobile hotspots, which I don't use all that much. What are we paying all that money for?
This is not going to come as a surprise to you, but we have the answer right here on the Futures Edge podcast, because the Futures Edge podcast is partnering with Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile offers all these features for as low as $15 per month. It's built on the nation's largest 5G network. The reason it keeps costs low is because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores. They cut out the salespeople. It's just a much more efficient process.
Like, why should anybody have to pay more than you have to for access to the same exact network? Go to mintmobile.com/futuresedge. Also linked to the show description to get a premium wireless service for, you ready for it? $15 a month.
Okay, and if you're like people who are old, like Bobby and I, we don't like to change anything. We don't like our routines to change. Now, you want to know how hard it is to switch your service? Well, the big wireless companies want you to think it's really hard, but switching to Mint Mobile is super easy thanks to their digital eSIM card, which most phones now have. You can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. If your phone doesn't have an eSIM, Mint will ship you a new SIM card for free. How about that?
Yeah, Jimmy and I talk about not wanting anyone to tell us what to do, that sort of libertarian bent that we both have. Well, Big Wireless wants you to think they're the only option. So do not be fooled. Go to mintmobile.com/futuresedge. Also, again, linked in the show description, and stop paying more than you have to for your phone plan. By the way, now through the end of January, new customers can get any plan for just $15 a month when they purchase 3 months or more. This includes the unlimited plan, which is normally $30 a month. So not only are you going to save the difference between your current plan and Mint Mobile's normal pricing, but you're going to save $45 for 3 months or more if you sign up for more versus Mint's own normally low prices. Complete no-brainer. Don't even think about it. Go to mintmobile.com/futuresedge.
But maybe you should wait till after you watch the podcast. We don't want you guys leaving the podcast right now. So watch the podcast first and then go to Mint Mobile and hit that link. Thank you, guys.
Do we have any financial questions for Dave? Because people are going to be like,
we should talk about when the shit's going to hit the fan, because I think it's going to be gruesome.
Okay, yeah, let's spend the next quick 10 minutes on.
Is there a swan of color coming up?
Do you see what is the swan? I know I think it is.
I tend to not consider black swans as important events. I tend to, as you guys know, I made a case that we're so overvalued that I think we're going to grind out undervaluation over decades.
I remember that.
I think we're going to have booms and busts and stuff like that. And people, the way you adjust investors' attitudes and price is every time the investors get on their feet and think they're okay, you knock them down again. And that's how you correct the market. If every time the market goes down to some level, it bounces back, you've corrected nothing. You just get the Jimmy Iuorios hitting the bid hard. And so if we drop 50% tomorrow, Jim would be a buyer.
No doubt.
Right? You guys would be jumping in. And so what you need to do is knock it down, 15 or 20, and then have people get on their feet, and then it kind of goes back up. And you go, let's knock them down another 10%. You go, okay, that was bad. This is getting a little old. And then, like in the Nikkei, 35 years later, you're still getting knocked down, although they're getting on their feet. But the Nikkei could be the most spectacular double top in history.
That would be amazing.
Right? Wouldn't that be amazing? 67 to 81 was a horrific period where inflation adjusted. The market got knocked down 75%. I've got this chart that I really like where if you're holding at the top, the inflation adjusted 75 years later, you're at the same price. People don't know that. They don't understand that there are periods in history where we've treaded water, inflation adjusted for 75 years. They don't understand that inflation adjusted. The market is, if you adjust for inflation not using CPI, which we know is bullshit, especially since around 1980, it went into the bullshit zone. You adjust for CPI, you adjust for inflation instead using M2 money supply, which strikes me as a real clean inflation metric because it is, if inflation's money supply.
Yep.
Ron Grice of the chart store first showed me a plot of the market adjusted for the market cap adjusted for M2, and over 100 years it hadn't moved. 100 years it had not moved. Then he showed me, he said, in case you're getting beaten up on Twitter because of that chart you used, he says, let me give you another. It was the total return of the market over that 100 years, adjusted for M2, and it was up 3.79% annually. That happens to be almost identical to the number Buffett said is all you can expect. Those are valuation independent reads. That's assuming valuation doesn't move. Those are just sort of long-term. Guy named Ed McQuarrie said the same thing. So the current valuation, I have it 150, 180% overvalued. And you can say, oh, I don't like that metric. I go, okay, I got another one for you. Try this one. Oh, you don't like that one? Here, I tried this one. I got 25 of them. They all paint the same picture that we're way overvalued. Now, here's I figured out how to say it. There's not a single market or even a single equity in history that got way overvalued that didn't eventually become cheap.
But the one thing,
not a single one in history.
By the way, Bobby, for you, Dave and I have disagreed about this part for years when we've discussed this too. I think the one wild card in the equation is you said M2 money supply, but just the general devaluing of the dollar through money creation.
But that's inflation.
Yes, I know.
Inflation adjusts that. You're going to get market cap.
What they're doing, in my opinion, is they're forcing you to do something with your dollars. You know what I mean? So they're literally pushing people into the stock market. And that, I understand that works up until it doesn't. But I keep looking at it like, what are you supposed to do with your money? I have land. I have real estate. I have gold, silver, Bitcoin. But I also have stocks. And I have stocks because, again, they're denominated in dollars. And the weaker that dollar gets, something's got to go up. That makes sense?
Yes, until it doesn't.
Right. And the question is, when doesn't it? Right.
And what people will find, even those who think they understand this stuff, is that when it finally comes time to revalue everything, right, whether it's real estate along the California coast or Florida or whatever, your house, equities, when it comes to revalue everything, there will be no place to hide. And the nightmare scenario for me is that they can cause the thing to just tread water and provide. I would love to buy stuff at fair value. I don't need cheap. I'll take it at fair value. The longer they keep it in this bloated, bizarre situation, the longer I have to sit there, and I can't buy something that's way overvalued. I have a filter I put every major decision through, and the decision is, if this goes very, very wrong, will you forgive yourself? And if the answer is no, I don't do it. And if I buy into a Stan Druckenmiller tech stock fund in March of 2000, and it goes very wrong, I would not forgive myself, just like Stan has never forgiven himself. Mm. And so I look at the markets, I say, look, I will forgive myself for buying some pretty decent looking energy equities, some materials equities. I have no trouble owning gold. Gold's up, since 1971, it's up 7.5% a year, right? Yep. And now here's the horror story. This is the good news, bad news for me. I'm sufficiently old and sufficiently affluent now that I save about 25% of my gross salary. I saved money while my kids were in college.
Wow.
That's impressive.
I save about 25% of my gross salary every year. It is not enough to compensate for inflation now.
Yep.
And the key there is you say, well, how big a portfolio do you have? Unfortunately, the answer is pretty big. And it's pretty big because I did really well to 99. I completely skipped the dot-com collapse, completely skipped it, bought gold, started buying energy equities as an inflation hedge, not realizing I was catching a commodity bull. And then what I missed was the 2010 to 2020, whatever, bull market. I really missed that, and I compounded like 4%. It was uninspired. But the next 10 years will determine whether I'm right or wrong. I still beat the market over 20 years by 2% annualized, the S&P. But the last 10 sucked.
Yeah.
But the next 10, during the noughts, while most people are getting kicked by 2 bear markets, neither of which, in my opinion, fully corrected the markets. Neither did. But while they're getting kicked by 2 bear markets, I compounded 13% a year for that decade. That makes all the difference in the world right there. 1 decade was now I can't fuck up. That's the goal. Don't fuck up. And so I'm not going to buy shit. I made a mistake in 08, 09 when I had a lot of cash, and I got greedy, and I thought there was another halving in the process. There should have been another halving in the process. It shouldn't have stopped where it stopped, but $30 trillion, it's amazing what that will buy.
Damn
and
straight.
Nobody saw that coming. I will adjust my portfolio to be proportional to the value irrespective of the direction next time. So it's a coming and a going planet. And when the market, if it hits fair value, I'm going to say, how much should you own at fair value? Now, one day I was sitting at a hedge fund dinner. Now you're going, Dave, I didn't know you had a hedge fund. I didn't either. But I'm in a hedge fund dinner with like 7 other guys. One of them's Einhorn, who I know well, but that's not why I was at the dinner. That was coincidence. And some techie was spouting off about tech stocks like crazy. And Einhorn's a man of few words. I don't know if you know him, but he really, when you talk to him, you feel like you're deposing him. He just, yes, no, that sort of thing. And the guy's spouting off, and I'm watching Einhorn, and he finally loses his shit. And he says, do you have any idea what it's like to ride a position down 95%? He says, do you know what 95% is? It's when you go down 90% and then your position gets cut in half. And this young tech bull is like sort of reeling from having his ears pinned back by a guy who normally doesn't lash out like that. And there will be a period where I'm going to be right. No one's going to want to hear it. And I told you so. There's a Roman proverb says, the vanquished weep, victors don't laugh. And that period will be when it's time to buy. Right. When you can't give the shit away. But I can't wait till that period. I've realized but you do want to own shit that pays you to own it. Yeah. That's a really important concept, that if you buy and say, look, see that dividend there and see that revenue stream and see that's enough for me. Because then your safety net is, look, they're paying me 4.5%, 5% a year.
Makes sense.
Just to own the damn thing. So you do not want to own story stocks during rough times. Those don't work well. But everything's going to go.
NVIDIA, like the AI story, is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, that's solid as a rock at 40 times revenues. Yeah. The NVIDIA story, and people look at NVIDIA and they think it's cheap. And I go, what do you? I actually put out a tweet, said I'm going to put it in my deep value fund now. And they lost 4% or something.
I don't even care if somebody buys NVIDIA. Calling it cheap, though, is silly. If you're just like, look, I want to ride the momentum. But if you're calling it cheap,
that's fine.
It reminds me when people used to say, I'm voting for Obama because he's different. I'm like, vote for him for whatever reason you want. Don't tell me he's different.
So NVIDIA is trading at 40 times revenues. And according to Fred Hickey, their revenues in part are because they're selling real equipment way over the price they should be able to sell it for. And it's not like competitors aren't going to show up and say, by the way, we've got chips too.
And it's supposed to work, right?
Yeah, and that's where it's supposed to work. And, Sun Microsystems was at 10 times revenues before a 95% Swan dive. So when those NVIDIA guys are blubbering in fetal position on the ground, I'm not going to feel a lot of pain for them. I'm not going to sympathize. Microsoft, the last 10 bagger. Microsoft's a 10 bagger over the last dozen years. Fivefold of that 10, meaning all but a factor of 2, is valuation expansion. That will contract. As I said, nothing has ever gotten overvalued without eventually becoming undervalued. Nothing in history, because nothing ever just goes up in terms of valuation. It just stays overvalued. It will go back to cheap. And the guy said, well, Microsoft, some guy the other day said, well, Microsoft, 10 years ago was trading at 4 times today's earnings. I go, but that's 10 years later with all the inflation. That's not cheap.
That's no right. Exactly. Yeah.
That was reasonably priced. And now fivefold later valuation expansion, they're not reasonably priced.
Wow.
What new product are they putting out?
Right.
Some cloud shit.
Yeah.
They're
exactly.
seeding clouds
that aren't products.
And what new Apple product has come out since Jobster died, right?
Yeah.
Nothing. Oh, people say, oh, the watch. I go, oh my God, he invented the watch? I thought that was invented like 400 or 500 years ago.
Yeah, it's a cell phone that you wear on your wrist. It's just smaller. Whatever. What are we talking about?
Tedious as shit. Yeah. My wife wanted one. She hasn't used it. She has not used it.
Yeah, they're stupid. My daughters have them. One daughter wears theirs, the other does not, I think. Yeah.
Right. So it's not a game changer. The
Bobby,
game changer is when he pulled the phone out of his pocket.
Yeah. What's that?
When he pulled that phone out of his pocket on stage. That was the game changer.
That was the game changer. Right. Yes.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah. All right. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I've got 50 more questions, but we don't have time.
Go for it.
Love it.
If nothing,
a ton of fun.